Hey everybody, Nick here, and today we're going to do some disassembly and maintenance on this big, ridiculous knife right here. This is the CKF Muscle. This knife is just spectacular in a variety of ways, but I want to thank my buddy Nico for sending it along. It's also worth noting that this is a heavily customized muscle. It's been re-anodized, acid washed, and re-sharpened here, and so this is not exactly factory, but nonetheless, it gives me a great sense of the knife. And before I do my full review and carry it, I want to do a clean out, because unfortunately, if we take a listen to it here, there's a lot of grit someplace up inside there, and so I want to check out and see what's going on there and see if I can make it a little bit better before I give my full review. So let's go ahead and take this guy apart. So, here we go. This knife is absolutely insane in the very best of ways. Not T6, looks like T8. At some level, it's just hilarious to me that they're using a T8 screw on this huge pivot. It seems comically small. There we go. Pop this guy loose here. Beautiful. Appears to have no Loctite. Nice smooth threading there. This is T8 here as well. So I'll pop them loose on this side so I'm not undoing the pocket clip, because that's more complication than I'd like. By the way, you may hear English people talking in the background. That would be the fiance watching some show or another that involves English people being naughty. Downton Abbey or something along those lines. So there are not English people breaking into my house, in case that was a concern for you. So, let's see if we can pop this guy loose here. Unfortunately, the pivot is kind of on the other side from the screws that we removed, so it might be a little trickier here, but that's okay. We're going to make this happen. Let's go ahead and pop this guy out. There we go. And everything is popped loose. Now let's see what's going on here. My suspicion, so okay, trying to diagnose a gritty action like that, there are a couple of things that can be going on. First off, there can be junk in the bearing race, or there can be broken bearings. I'm not seeing any immediate evidence of that, but we're going to find out. There can also be all sorts of grit on the pivot, or more specifically in this little area right here, where the detent ball runs along the blade. And I kind of think that that's what's going on here. Maybe there's some grit there. The other risk is always that during an acid wash, somebody, and that's what I'm slightly afraid of here, but that during an acid wash, it's very easy to accidentally get some of that acidification, if you will, onto the detent ball path, and that will actually cause the blade to ride up and down and give it some of that gritty feeling. So I'm hoping that'll wash right off here with a little bit of our isopropyl alcohol here, but we're about to find out. So I'll just start off by actually hitting the blue. Oh, that's a shame. That's not actually grit at all. So the reason that I'm saying that that's a shame is I was hoping that this right here was just grit, like that there was just something on there. But unfortunately, what looks like happened here is that as the person who did this acid wash, you're seeing some. Well, unfortunately, you're seeing that it etched into the blade in the detent ball path, and that's what's causing that sort of action. I want to rule out the fact that that there isn't bearing involvement or something along those lines as well. That's a good idea, but unfortunately, I'm afraid that I'm not going to be able to do a whole bunch for that. This is something that you could probably polish out given enough time, but I'm curious how deep that etch is in there. It's not too bad. God, those English people are loud next door. That's okay. I still love her. Anyways, so that's a little ugly right there. This is a reason why you'll often see in factory acid washes a whole area of the knife that's been completely masked off, like with a big sticker. I know the Grimsmo brothers use a sticker for their acid washing and whatnot. And so that can be something you need to watch out for, especially if you're just getting into the acid wash business. You want to make sure that this area remains smooth and polished, or you're going to end up with an issue along those lines. Let's go ahead and clean off the bearings here. This is an area where we could be having some of the trouble here. It's possible, although that looks pretty diagnostic right there. That's kind of a shame, but that's life. So I'm going to go ahead and pop this guy through here. That was a nice little basket. Pop that through. And again, right now I'm just washing this off. I don't actually know what chemical or lubrication was used here to tighten everything down. I'm sorry. Well, yeah, when he tightened everything down. But, you know, I'm going to replace it with stuff that I know. And have done so at my buddy's blessings, so might as well give him the best. Right now, looking at this track, and by the way, we're looking at a multi-row bearing system here, which I didn't even highlight because I was busy looking at this, but that is kind of neat. It's unusual still, and it provides an extra layer of support for the knife and for the bearings. So I respect that, and I appreciate that. Also worth highlighting here, as I'm playing diagnostic here, is that there's a whole bunch of interior milling on this knife. This knife is big and heavy, 100%. There's no question about that. But that interior milling is no doubt helping out. Because holy crap, without that, that'd be insane. So, yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking at here. The, let's see here, clean off the pivot real quick. That's a heck of a pivot. This knife is just freaking huge overall. Like I said, it's borderline comical. And I'm going to go ahead and use my little loop here, because I am very curious about the state of this detent ball path here. I wish I could, can I show this off? Maybe. Unfortunately, no. I'll just have to use my eyes and report back in. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's really ugly. There's some... You can actually see, and you may be able to see it a little bit just looking at it on the camera here, but there were little areas here where the etch was not, like where the looks like he used nail polish or something along those lines, where the little hairs of the nail polish brush applicator scraped off all the etch. And as a result, let's see if I can zoom in there, there were areas where it's etched deeply and there were areas where it's not etched. That's no good. I'll be completely honest with you here. And so that's an error in the acid washing process. And so not a huge fan of that. You know, I don't mean to trash on my buddy Nico's knife, but I know that he didn't do the acid wash. So, you know, I feel a little more okay with it. But that is 100% why we're getting that grittiness. And the unfortunate aspect of that is, like I said, until this area gets polished off, and that's not something I'm really set up to do, that grittiness isn't going to go away. I'd really hope that there was just some grime or gunk in there that was causing that problem. But unfortunately, it doesn't appear to be the case. So, that's life, I suppose. This is also why it's a very good idea to get to do some vetting on whoever's going to modify a knife. I mean, knife modification is not actually a straightforward process. Just putting a little bit of oil on there, and I kind of put it in a little cross pad in there, so that way it would contact both sets of bearings. And I'm just going to spin the bearings a little bit here. That'll get the oil nicely distributed onto them. Then I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit, well, actually... So because there's this etching here, I'm going to use a thicker oil on the detent ball track here, just in hopes that that'll maybe help that along. Really going to soak that a little bit. It's not necessarily ideal, but it'll do the trick. And hopefully that'll wear away over time as the detent ball is used more often. Whoa, that's sharp. Just bit into my freaking... neat. At least it's very, very sharp. That's a good thing. Forgot to clean this off. And I'm going to put a little drop of this thicker stuff on the detent ball itself, just as well. This is the 85 weight nano oil. But anyways, as I was saying, this is the reason why you really want to vet anybody who's going to work on your knife. It's not out of line to ask these people for references. If somebody's wanting to do some work, and especially on something that's, you know, more pricey, you know, if somebody's working on your rat too, then okay, you can take some risk here. But, you know, it's not a bad idea to go into that process. And, you know, I know my buddy Nico had done that, but sometimes people, project might get out of hand for him or something along those lines. It's always disappointing, and I got sympathy because this is not an easy thing to be doing. But, you know, it's always a dangerous process here. So there we go. I've gone ahead and lubricated these guys here. The detent ramp, detent ball and everything. Is there a detent ramp on this knife? I'm about to find out now, aren't I? No, there's not really. There's just a lock face. But that's life. Anyways, the detent ball and detent ball path is now lubricated. The only parts remaining to put on here are this scale here. That'll lock in a couple of places. It is worth noting that the back spacer is pinned in a couple of places here. So you actually get a little bit more lateral support rather than just having these two screws in there, which is a nice thing. It's a good choice by the CKF folks. But it's also why it took a little bit of doing to get this guy together. And then I'm going to throw a little bit of blue Loctite on these screws just so they don't fall out. It's a big, beefy knife, so might as well give it big, beefy reassembly here. Let's see here. That's that. Number 298, apparently. There's that. And now we're going to do this. Go ahead and drop this tail screw in here. And then finally drop the pivot in. So before I do the pivot here, I'll put a little Loctite on there, and then in that process, I'm going to go ahead and once I kind of get it guided in and screwing in properly, I'm going to release the lock bar tension a little bit, and that'll let things slide through a little bit more realistically. Tighten down a little bit more. Oh, yeah. Unfortunately, that grittiness is still very much there, which is, well, you saw why. That's unfortunate. It makes an unpleasant sound and whatnot, but the knife is otherwise still fairly smooth, and, you know, the action's good. Frankly, it flips a little better. I might be able to back that off slightly. No blade play on either direction. I'm going to back the pivot off slightly, see if that improves our action. So right now I got it all the way cranked down. Zero blade play, and it does fall shut. So there you go. That's the situation, and that's the CKF Muscle, taking it apart. Very entertaining knife, and, you know, I do respect the construction of it. That interior milling is very nice. The thickness of the pivot is nice. I mean, it is a nicely made knife. CKF can do some wonderful work. So there we go. Hope this has been interesting to you. Thank you again, Nico, for letting me do the disassembly here, and have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.